Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Storyteller Circle with B. Dave Walters. I've had people asking me for a little while now to produce some content about writing, storytelling, DMing, because it is all a very similar and interrelated discipline, and as you know, it is one of the things that I love the most in life and love nerding out and geeking out and talking about. So, I'm going to explain to you guys today my actual thought process of how I'm putting together a level 21 shot that is going to be happening as of the time of this recording tomorrow for Odyssey events. We are doing an event benefiting Treehouse. I'm going to have Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford, WWE superstar Ember Moon, and that bronze girl Jasmine at our table, and we're going to be doing a crazy thing. So as I'm finishing preparing for this, I'm going to share with you how it is I've done it and what it is I'm thinking and how I assembled all of this. Also, patrons of mine will have access to this content 3 days early. So patrons get all my videos, podcasts, all of those things 3 days earlier than non-patrons, all tiers. So if you like this stuff and you want to see it sooner, visit patreon.com/bdavewalters. So we're doing this thing. It sort of fell out of the sky. I agreed to do it a week, maybe 10 days ago. I found out 2 days ago what everyone is playing. I'm not going to say what they're playing because it might change. Well, here, this is my understanding. Everything, literally everything I'm about to tell you in this video may all change and get lit on fire and fly out the window tomorrow, since by the time you see this, theoretically, the event's already happened. Hopefully you saw it. I'm sure it was amazing. But you will know what I was thinking in advance, and we'll all be able to compare that versus what actually happens. I know Perkins intends to play a cleric of some sort. I know Jeremy Crawford intends to play a wizard. Ember Moon is playing a rogue, and Jasmine had several options that she kind of had in mind to play. And I also told them that this was a good time to play multi-class characters, like builds that might be difficult when you're leveling up, but kind of come together eventually as sort of a whole thing. So, we'll see. The plan might change radically. The only parameters I was given was they wanted us to have champions in the title, because as the creeping apocalypse has hit and we've all sort of been driven indoors, the theme of the previous event was champions, and so they wanted us to have that included somehow. So for me, I chose Trial of the Champions. Now, I picked a level 20 game. Why? Because level 20 is my niche. Right now, fewer than 5% of games, at least according to D&D Beyond statistics, feature high-level play, which I think is a tragedy and a crime. But I understand why it is that way. It is difficult to get people together to play once, much less to play over a long enough period of time to level up that way organically. And also, things get complicated if you are not a very good, if you don't have a lot of experience with play. I won't say if you're not a very good player. If you don't have a lot of experience with play, it can be overwhelming, and it is difficult to challenge high-level groups. Again, I have to challenge people tomorrow that literally wrote the game, so we're going to see how that goes. I like my chances, though, because the reason why I like high-level play, and I've carved that out, is my niche, and the thing I like to do, is because the entire point of these games, to me, is to feel powerful, to feel like you're at cause in the narrative, like what you do matters. Not necessarily to be a hero. Some people are straight up villains in these games, but it is still important that they need to feel like what they do matters. And when you have characters who have powers that can literally alter reality, they can wipe out whole entire kingdoms if they choose to in just a single spell or 3, right? There is nothing more impactful than that. So that is why I like doing that. I like being able to play heroes that are confronted with, then the game no longer becomes about what can you do, it becomes about what should you do. If you're familiar with my work on Theogony of Kairos, which was the first stream that I DM'd a little while back, it can be hard to come by. If you're looking for it, DM me on Twitter at @BDaveWalters. I'll hook you up for it, hook you up with it, because it can be difficult to locate. Was a level 20 game. And in that game, I started them out at level 0, actually, because I wanted them to I wanted their abilities to have weight. if I'd started them out and I'm all like, hey, there's the bully that was always mean to you, and you're like, cool, 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 disintegrate, right? So I needed to have some time to put a face on the people, to make their stories matter, to bring them to life before I could put them in danger. Because then, when the dragon attack hits and everybody's screaming and running for their lives, you actually care about the baker and his daughter. They're no longer just collateral damage. So it raises the stakes, because that's what you as storyteller have to do. You have to create situations and characters and NPCs that they encounter that matter, that they're actually going to care what happens to. If you haven't given any depth or nuance to the people that they're trying to save, then it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, if they're just being heroic, they will try and save the innocent people. But that is not at all the same as trying to save the butcher's son that has the captain's exam tomorrow, and if he passes, he's going to be able to pay for it to be able to move his family out of this desolate neighborhood in the slums of Waterdeep, right? So the more nuance you can give, the better. Now, I was recently talking to somebody about how to create meaningful NPCs or non-player characters if you don't play games, because everything I'm telling you applies to narratives, period. Just period. Right, we're talking non-player characters in this case, but it also counts as supporting characters in a story, because you still have to create somebody that your reader or your viewer or your watcher or your whoever is going to care about. And one of the easiest ways to do that is you give them at least one defining characteristic that is unique, right? And I mean more than just they're the goblin. That's not enough. But they're the agoraphobic goblin, They're the greedy satyr. They're the bugbear who steals everything that isn't nailed down, right? And then when you have these defining characteristics to them, then the players will remember them and the players will want to interact with them. And when the players interact with them, that gives you chances to ad-lib with them and actually really bring them to life. I've had characters I created just kind of on a lark, that when the players fell in love with them and then the audience fell in love with them, then it was just a thing. For Long Beach by Night, I created a bunch of fae that they met in Long Beach. One of them was a satyr named Fawn that is slightly a klepto. She doesn't steal because she has to. She steals because she wants to. And she carries a Bowie knife and a revolver. And just describing this tiny little deer person with a Bowie knife and a revolver who is an unseelie fae. So in this world, unseelie fae are hedonists, ultimate hedonists. So imagine this adorable hedonist that really will cut you if she has to. And it was like the secret sauce. It's it was made and everybody was happy and people love Fawn, and she's become kind of a breakout hit of the show. But again, it was just trying to find some interesting variations on things and try to not necessarily give in to the tropes. Or if you are going to do something tropey, see if you can sort of turn it on its head a little bit. Do something to play with the convention that is going to make people act in a way that you wouldn't expect. One of the things to keep in mind is when you're dealing with intelligent creatures, they are intelligent creatures. They have a rationale. They have a motivation for the things they're doing. So if, and I've said this many times and I will continue saying it, if you have set up an adventure or a scenario where you're the orcs are attacking because they're orcs, well, that's bad adventure design. That's not a good enough reason. Are they attacking because they're starving? Did their crops not come in? Did someone else destroy their crops? Did someone else steal their crops? Are they warlike expansionists that believe that orcs are the supreme species on the planet and should rule everything, right? But I mean, give them a motivation that makes sense, and ideally, give them a motivation that truly does make sense from their point of view. Right? Even if you play someone that is supposed to be insane, they still should have an insane logic. That it's oh, okay, well, given A and B, I definitely understand how you get to C, right? That is how you have living, breathing characters exist in your world that aren't just caricatures. Because human beings, we in real life definitely get stuck in routine and going through the motions, but for the most part, there is a reason why we do what we do. So make sure that you know what your reason is. And even when you're talking about players, your characters, if you're not the one telling the story, but you're participating in the story, because it is a collaborative art, your participation is helping tell the story. One of the things you need to know is having a real, true understanding of exactly who your character is and how they see this world, and most importantly, what they want. Everyone in the story should want something, even if it's a glass of water. That's one of Kurt Vonnegut's rules of screenwriting. Everybody wants something, right? The monsters, the NPCs, the players themselves. So, but when you're clear on when you're playing what your character wants, what their motivations are, then you can act spontaneously and you can act organically and you can do something without having to deliberate too much because it's clear to you who your character is. Like today on Beyond Heroes, I was confronted with essentially a chance to join the dark side, and that is not freely. That's not that character. He's my sweet lucky boy. He is innately good. Like, he is innately good. I've got plenty of characters that super would have taken that deal without hesitating. Freely's not one of them, right? So the answer was no, even if it meant his death, and quite frankly, it very nearly did, but I won't say how it all worked out because of spoilers. Sorry, I just bumped the camera stand. Hopefully I didn't give you a little too much dizziness and vertigo there. Those of you that are listening just to the audio version of this, you were not just subjected to an old school Enterprise, like shields up, we're under attack shaking thing. But there you go. I'll move the mic around a little bit so you can get like a similar effect. Okay. So that's that. So specifics for tomorrow, and this really is me brainstorming right now. I've only got 3 hours. I've got 4 players. I've got 2 are incredibly experienced and 2 very experienced players. Good. So I can do more complex stuff. I would start them at level 0 also, especially because with Chris Perkins there, we have a going joke that when I played at the stream at the Descent into Avernus D&D event last year, the first thing he did was like drop us all to like a minimum hit points, and I got dropped to 1 hit point. I started the game and survived in all of Avernus, might I add, with 1 hit point. I might actually start them at level 0. I think I will. I'll start them at level 0, and the first thing they have to do is think their way out of something, because they will not expect that. That'll be a crazy curveball. That will raise the stakes immediately for them, raise the stakes immediately for the audience. Again, we only have 3 hours, so I think I can leave them there a maximum of an hour, probably more like 30 minutes. I'm going to confront them with a puzzle of some sort. Now, I'm going to tell you a trick about puzzles. It helps if you can figure it out in advance to have the logic there, but there's times every DM oftentimes will have an idea in their mind of how it's going to work out, but then as the players are working through it, they come up with some idea that you hadn't thought of, and you're like, oh, actually, that's dope, you know, and you just sort of let their idea work. We've all done that. So there's a chance I might do that. I might come up with the exact solution, but yes, that will be their first trap they're going to find themselves in right at the start of the game. They will be level 0. Then when they get through this, however long that takes, hopefully it'll take 15-ish minutes, not more than an hour. Then I will thrust them into the actual thing. I called it the Trial of the Champions because I'm going to do one of 2 things. Let's talk that through now. I'm either going to have them be competing to be the champion / avatar of a god, or already being chosen to represent their gods in a sort of Olympics of sorts. I think I'm probably going to do more. They're going to think they're champions of their gods. That's it. I'm going to do both. They're going to think they're champions of their gods. And the curveball is they're going to get to the end, and there's going to be a new god. And he or she, I think I'm going to bring back the little baby godling from Theogony of Kairos, Crawford. I think I will, actually, because he was inspired by Jeremy Crawford. So that will be both deep cut to my oldest fans, and also a nod to Jeremy Crawford, who will be at the table. And that's going to be the reveal. The winner is being chosen to be the champion of that god. Who knows, pending how it all shakes out. He might take multiple champions. I don't know. Okay, so that'll be that. First hour, the first event, level 0. Actually, now let me tell you a side detour here. When I plot my adventures, especially for streaming, I plot them out just like I plot out an episode of television or a film screenplay, exactly the same way. The only difference is when I'm writing film, I like to use 5x. With streams, I usually use 3x because it neatly confirms to the hour. Each hour is roughly an act. So you kind of have an idea of where you should be roughly. I plot and plan out the beginning very tightly because the beginning's the hard part. And then up to about the midway point, I have a pretty clear idea of how things are going to go. And then for the second half, I have an incredibly loose idea of where things are going to go, or at least roughly where I want them to end up. Because what you will find, and you may have already found, is both the dice and the players will surprise you. So it is not possible to very tightly plan everything. Otherwise, the adventure will start to feel like it's on rails, and nobody wants that. Again, remember when I said at the beginning, the reason why people play these games is to feel like they're at cause in something, that what they do matters. And if you have them on rails, where it goes through the same thing no matter what they do, they will catch on and they will resent it, and they will be very angry and bitter about it, right? So I think that will be it in broad strokes. Of course, when we're done here, I'm going to go load up D&D Beyond, pick some specific monsters and things like that. Now, another trick of high-level play, for the record, is it can become rocket tag. The name of the game in D&D in particular is Action Economy. And so when you have 4 players who by then have multiple actions, multiple attacks, they can run over almost any monster. And so an easy way to get around that I have used over the years is a lot of times I just know, like, I'm not even going to start counting the monster's hit points till the 3rd round, right? Like, I mean, if they fight, it's basically unkillable till the 3rd, and then we will start counting at that point. Unless they do something really interesting, like I won't punish them. Like if they come up with something incredibly clever, of course it can work. But if it is just dice rolling, not so much, because even when I've said this before, and sometimes people try and get mad at me about this, and I really need to express to you the depths to which I truly, in my heart of hearts, do not care. But even if I have to justify it, it's simple, because the concept of the challenge rating very quickly breaks down at the high level. And the challenge rating, if you're not overly familiar with D&D, it is a loose system, and it is loose, of how many player levels you should have to deal with a certain monster. So if you have a CR10 monster, let's say an owlbear. I don't know off the top of my head if owlbears are CR10, but let's say they are. No, let's go with a monster I do know, Tiamat. Tiamat's a CR30, the goddess, right? So what that means is, theoretically, one level 20 character should have no chance against her. Pending the character, that's not necessarily true. But it theoretically means that 2 level 15 characters should be fairly evenly matched. I also kind of feel that's not true. However, a full group of level 20 characters will run her over, because that's 80 levels compared to her challenge rating of 30. You understand? So if you do it completely by the book, 1-to-1, it is very, very difficult for any monster to live more than 1 round, and definitely live more than 3 is incredibly hard. So the way you challenge high-level players, both in terms of the actual levels on the page and the powers they possess, but also players just with a lot of experience, is you confront them with one of 2 problems. Honestly, it's the exact same way you write a good story for Superman. You confront him with something bigger and stronger than him. That's what a character like Darkseid is. Or you present them with a solution that cannot be solved with violence. That's what Lex Luthor represents, right? Now, you have to be wary about this, because people that are playing high-level games expect to be able to do high-level things. If Jeremy Crawford does in fact show up with a high-level wizard, he's going to want to cast Wish or throw Meteor Swarm, and he should be able to, right? But I put it in situations, like, I'll give you a classic example. This is something I did in Theogony of Kairos, which you should watch. You should hit me up, and I will show you where you can find it. Again, they were level 0. and there was a goblin invasion, and the goblins overran the town, and they were all kidnapped, and they were locked up to be executed. And it was when they were, this was episode 3, by the way. I thought we were gonna be done in 1, but I mean, it just so happens this was the way it worked out. Organically, it was more interesting to kind of slow boat it, so it really meant something when they got their powers. So the gods appear to them again. I won't give you the specifics, but they get their powers at the end of episode 3. So in episode 4, they're suddenly like literally these gods, and they're in the middle of a goblin warren, right? And the goblins have, of course, been real jerks to them up until now. And so, of course, they start blasting them. You know, fireballs, meteor swarms, burning hands, just all these things they've been waiting to do. They just set off. And of course, the goblin warrens catches on fire. It's all burning. They're going through blast, 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 and they're feeling great because, like, I really made these goblins jerks. So they were really happy to finally be able to get even with them. And they kick in a door, and it's the nursery, full of little goblin babies. What do? Do you leave them because the building's on fire? Do you take them out of here because you just killed all their parents? Do you fireball them because you're like they're goblins and they're going to grow up evil anyway? What do you do? Again, I won't tell you what they did, but you understand that was a quandary that was more about who they were as characters and who those characters were going to be going forward, more than it was about how much force they could generate, if that makes sense. So yeah, like I said, after this, I'm going to load up D&D Beyond. I'm going to go pick out some specific creatures that I know I can throw at them. I got some that are just favorites of mine. Was the Night Walkers, I believe they're called. Either Night Walkers or Night Stalkers from Mordenkainen's, I believe. They're super high level undead with like the anti-life aura around them. Don't at me if I got the name wrong. I'm sure I did. I'll look it up and I'll say it right on the stream. But those are incredibly dope because, again, they just start killing everything around them. And when you drop 2 of them on a group, believe me, it gets their attention very, very quickly because they're incredibly lethal monsters. I'm going to drop in some of those. Probably drop in Tiamat, especially because Joe Manganiello's playing. So having the Dark Lady show up at some point would probably be nice. Yeah, come up with a couple of moral questions that they're going to have to try and figure out, and the puzzle of how they're going to get their powers in the first place. And I think that will probably cover 3 hours, especially giving them some chance to breathe, give them some chance to role play, give them some chance to interact with themselves, and let it go where it goes and let it be dope. So yeah, I think that's it. I have no idea how long these are going to go on average, but I think right now I've pretty much covered what I have to say about this. But if you have any questions about DMing, about writing, about storytelling, hit me up on Twitter. You can send it to me directly. My DMs are open at bdavewalters, or you can just tweet it and tag me in it. I'll either answer you then, or if you ask me something really interesting and thought-provoking, I might record a video like this. So I'm going to be pumping out a lot more content, especially now I realize, as of the time of this recording, everybody's stuck at home. I hope in the fullness of time, somebody comes back and watches this when that is just a bygone memory of how it used to be, but as of now, it's it. So I'm going to be ramping up the content to just kind of, give people some things to do and something else to think about rather than just feeling like they're climbing up the walls. Oh, and as of now, I am giving away my writing course to all my patrons, so of any tier. So again, you can see these videos early, and my 2-week course on everything you need to become a better writer, to set you on the path of going pro. It is building from the ground up, story structure and character development. I'm giving that away free to all my patrons. So patreon.com/bdavewalters. And in the meantime, stay safe out there and keep telling stories.